Okay, we do have a quorum. There is one other individual that is on Zoom, and we're expecting one more. So let's go ahead and get the meeting started. Call to order.
Yes, Brian Rutherford is absent. Daniel Ryan.
Present.
Rosemary Ricky Mail is absent. Tim Orick is on Zoom.
Present.
Andrew Belt
Present.
and AJ Lang.
Present.
Thank you. We do have a quorum. I will go ahead and proceed with the hybrid statement. This meeting is now being recorded in the board hearing room with Board of Zoning Appeal members attending in person. There is also an option for virtual attendance on Zoom webinar. For Zoom participants wishing to speak, please use the raise hand function in the Zoom app at the start of the agenda item on which you desire to comment. Comments will be received from in-person attendees first, followed by Zoom participants. When it is your turn to speak, the moderator will recognize you by the name or phone number used to join Zoom webinar. Please state your name and the city and state where you reside for the record, followed by your comments. All public speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. If you have trouble with Zoom, please call 913-715-9666. Board members, staff, and presenters, please state your name every time you begin talking, and please speak into the microphone so your comments can be transcribed for the record. This is a public meeting. We are presenting the meeting and recording the meeting as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none. Disclosure of conflicts of interest. Has anyone talked to the applicant or had any other contact? None? None? Approval of minutes of the previous meeting, November 13th, 2024. I know, Andrew, you were not here.
This is Dan Ryan. I move to approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
Got a motion
I second.
and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Thank you. Board reports. Board of County Commissioners actions. Is there anything?
Yes, good evening, Chairman, board members. Sean Pendley, County Planning Staff. I can provide board report updates. For the Board of County Commissioners, there were no updates relative to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Planning Commission updates, we would mention there was no meeting in January. Actually, there was a meeting scheduled for yesterday, January 28th. That meeting was canceled. We do have a meeting coming up in February. February 25th, we'll have a year in review where we'll look at all of the cases that were presented to the zoning boards in 2024 and the Planning Commission, provide an update on that. Also, we will have an update regarding our zoning and subdivision regulations project. We're working on an update to our regulations. And we have a consultant helping us with that, and we have an advisory committee that's been appointed to assist with that update. We'll provide an update to the Planning Commission, and really we'll probably end up providing updates to all of the boards regarding that project. That's going to take 18 months approximately. So we're going through that process right now for the update. In addition, we do have a training session for the next Planning Commission meeting. And again, that's on February 25th. Related to that, for the Board of Zoning Appeals, our staff is planning to provide a training session for a future BZA meeting. We'd like to schedule it on a regularly scheduled meeting, but not have it on a day where we actually have a case such as tonight. So we're looking at possibly April of this year having a training session for the Board of Zoning Appeals. And we'll look at various topics that I think have been mentioned before. There is a request for updates on variance applications and consideration of variance applications. So we'll invite our legal staff to provide an update and provide that training for the Board of Zoning Appeals. So we'll try to set a date and notify all of the board members, and hopefully we'll find a date that works for everyone. So look for that coming up in the near future. With that, that's it for board reports. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Shane.
Planning Commission?
Melissa. Mrs. J, you should note that Ms. Rosemary just is now in attendance.
Okay, then let's go ahead and get down to business. The application number W24-450 BZA variance billboard setbacks I-35 highway between 175th and 183rd Street.
Good evening, Zoe Brown, Planning. The case I have for you tonight is a setback variance request for 2 billboards. The subject property is located on Cedar Niles Road, fronting onto I-35. The current zoning is PEC 3, and the current land use is agricultural, with the exception of the 2 billboards. The applicant is requesting a variance to allow a reduction of setbacks for 2 existing billboards from the highway right-of-way. The setback requirement from the highway right-of-way is 35 feet. Sign number 1 is set back 13.8 feet, and sign number 2 is set back 12.5 feet. Here are the plans showing the existing setbacks of the signs. As shown on the plans, the signs meet the requirements when measured from the sign posts, but not when they're measured from the overall sign structure. Here's a graphic illustrating that. Today, the interpretation of the regulations is that the signs are measured from the overall sign structure rather than the sign post. But in 2014, the CUP was approved with setbacks measured from the sign post. Here's the approved site plan from the 2014 CUP. The dashed line shows the 35-foot building setback line. And at the time of the original CUP, both the applicant and staff were under the impression that the signs met the required setbacks as measured from the signpost. However, in 2024, when the applicant applied for the CUP renewal, staff discovered that the setbacks were measured from the signpost rather than the overall sign structure, and therefore do not meet the required 35-foot setbacks. Prior to the approval of a CUP renewal, a variance is required for the sign setbacks. Here's an aerial view showing the signs in relation to the highway. KDOT stated no concerns with the signs and confirmed that they're both up to date with the required state permits. Given the circumstances of the case, staff supports the variance request for the reduction of setbacks. For variance criteria number 1, the circumstances of the subject structures are unique and not ordinarily found in PEC 3 zoning. The situation is not self-created. Rather, staff and the applicant believe that the application met the regulations at the time of approval. This condition is unique in that it arises from a situation where 2 sign structures were already approved and permitted by the county under the current zoning regulations. For criterion number 2, regarding the rights of adjacent property owners, there have been no detrimental effects to nearby properties and no complaints about the signs. Therefore, granting a variance for setbacks will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent property owners. For criteria number 3, the strict application of the zoning regulations for the highway right-of-way setback would create an unnecessary hardship for the property owner because demolishing and reconstructing 2 new signs would be costly and time-consuming. Therefore, without approval of a variance, the applicant would be required to remove the 2 signs and go through the entire permitting process again. For criteria number 4, allowing the 2 signs to remain in their current position would not adversely affect the public health, safety, and welfare for the reasons that the signs have caused no adverse effects for the past 10 years, and all other performance standards for the signs have been met. And for the last criteria, granting the requested variance would not be in opposition to the general spirit and intent of the zoning regulations because the signs have not caused an obstruction to traffic visibility, nor do they impair the aesthetic quality of the county or compete for visual attention with other signs. Staff recommends approval of the variance request, and here's the recommended motion. I'm here for questions, and so is the applicant.
The
This is Andrew Belt. I move that the board approve the application number 24-450-BZA GA for the variance of the highway right-of-way setbacks of 13.8 and 12.5 feet for the two existing billboards where the zoning regulations require a setback of 35 feet. For the reason that the request complies with all of the criteria required for the approval as specified by the board or the zoning regulations and state statutes, more specifically set forth in the findings of fact recommended by the staff. Do I have a second?
Motion, do I hear a second?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Sean Penley, planning staff, I appreciate the motion and the expediency of this. One thing we do need to note is that we do need to open the public
Oh.
hearing for this. And I don't think there's anyone speaking in public, but we should see if there are anybody that wishes to speak.
Good try.
At this point, probably nobody wants to say anything, but
Okay, let's go ahead and open it. Rosemary, did you have something?
No.
Is it- And we've been informed nobody is on Zoom requesting to speak, and I don't believe there's anyone here. So, thank you.
So I can close the public hearing.
I will second the motion, Rosemary Mayo.
Thank you, Rosemary.
thank you, Rosemary.
I've got a motion and a second.
All right. Daniel Ryan,
Approve.
Rosemary,
Approve.
Ricky Mail, Tim Orick,
Approve.
Andrew Belt,
Approve.
and AJ Lang.
Approve.
Thank you. Motion passes.
This will be going before
Nope.
okay.
Yep, this actually, just final action. So
Okay.
this, this will not be considered by the Board of County Commissioners since it was approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. If there were a denial, there would be opportunities for an appeal, but in this case, this is final action. So this concludes this variance. I will note too that, as Zoe had mentioned in the presentation, there was a conditional use permit renewal required for the billboards. That's still in effect. And actually, we had continued that application for the West Zoning Board, and that will be considered at their February meeting. So this now will resume for the conditional use permit renewal, and once that permit's approved, then it's approved officially.
Terrific.
I do have one question. In the event that, let's say, for instance, a tornado came through and destroyed these signs. Coming back, would this meet the criteria that they would be allowed to be at the 12 and a half and the 14 foot or?
Sean Penley, planning staff, that is a great question. I believe when we look at we would have to consider this a non-conforming structure. If there's more, I think the understanding is if there's more than 50% of cost of replacement value of the structure, it has to comply with the current standards. So if there was more of a complete destruction of the signs and it costs more than 50% to rebuild or repair the signs, then they would have to comply with the current regulations and be set back appropriately. Unless a variance was approved for
Yeah, that's what I
that
was
reconstruction.
gonna
I
say.
think there's an opportunity for that as well. But most likely, if there was significant damage, it would need to be meet the current setbacks unless there was another variance. Also, if in the event, for whatever reason, let's say additional right-of-way is required for I-35 and KDOT needs to come through, they would likely work with the owner and the applicant to relocate the signs if needed in the future, but we're not aware of that. And, staff coordinated with KDOT and they indicated that there was no concern with their current location. But in the event, for whatever reason in the future, if a governmental agency needs to work with them to relocate the signs, they would do that and we could go through a separate process. It would probably just be a new CUP. We'd probably just amend the CUP and relocate them and get a new permit.
They look like they're pretty well sturdy, that they aren't going to go anywhere, but I just wanted to ask that question. Yeah, thank you. Is there any other further business in front of this board? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. No, I'm looking at Rosemary.
Andrew Belt.
Back of her head, but.
Andrew Belt, I moved to adjourn the meeting.
Dan Ryan, I second that.
A motion second, all in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed. Thank you.
Thanks you all for coming.